The campaign in Poland gave us the opportunity to really get to know the Jewish people. Nearly 4 million Jews live here in Poland, but they won't be found among the rural population, nor have they suffered from the chaos of war as has the native Pole. They set it out indifferently in the gloomy streets of the Polish ghetto. Yet within an hour after the German occupation, they were back in business. We Germans had a look at the Polish ghetto 25 years ago. This time our eyes are sharpened by our experience in the last few decades. Unlike in 1914, we no longer see just the most grotesque and comical of these questionable ghetto figures. This time we recognize that there's a plague here, a plague that threatens the health of the Aryan peoples. Richard Wagner once said, "The Jew is the demon behind the corruption of mankind." And these pictures prove it. Jewish home life reveals remarkable lack of creative ability to civilize. In plain language, Jewish dwellings are filthy and neglected. These Jews aren't at all poor. After decades of business, they've hoarded enough to acquire decent, comfortable homes. But they live for generations in the same dirty and bug-ridden dwellings. Untroubled by their surroundings, they go right on with their prayers. The bobbing motion is part of the ritual for reading Jewish scriptures. The main part of Jewish so-called community life takes place in the street. Seldom are Jews found doing useful work. And when they are, as here, it often isn't voluntary. The German military government is making them clear away rubble. It appears that they're not used to working and don't like it either. This isn't helplessness that's to be pitied, but something entirely different. These Jews don't want to work, but barter. Here, they're in their element. It's not true that Jews are forced into trade because other professions are closed to them. On the contrary, they welcome trade eagerly because it suits their character and natural inclination. One might want to regard these haggling children as a sign of great poverty. But watch them a while, and it becomes clear that they're proud to act as their grown-ups do. These young people don't have the idealism that ours do. With them, the egoism of the individual is not in the service of higher common goals. Instead, Jewish morality, in crass contradiction of the Aryan concept of ethics, proclaims the unrestrained egoism of every Jew to be divine law. His religion makes cheating and usury a duty. In the 5th book of Moses, for example, it is stated that a non-Jew thou may loan to upon usury, but not thy brother. That the Lord may bless thee in all thy dealings. For the Jews, then, doing business is something holy. This is totally incomprehensible to non-Jews. Aryan man attaches a sense of worth to every activity. He wants to create something worthwhile, food or clothing, houses or machines, works of art or anything else of value to everyone. He's ruled by the feeling of being responsible for his achievements. For the Jew, there's but one thing of value: money. How he gets it makes no difference. The first trade goods are generally worthless trash of all sorts. That's how the little Jews start out. Soon, they reach the point where they can sell from a tray, and before long, they've assembled a complete line of goods. Not long after, they own a regular stand. The most ambitious soon own a small shop and then a bigger shop. The most cunning, that is, the most unscrupulous, eventually have warehouses and banks and move into the most splendid mansions in the cities, provided that they don't get in each other's way, as in the narrow ghettos of the East. That's why they try to escape to rich lands with rich people. They need other peoples because they need the wares with which to do business. What creative Aryan peoples find of value has been reduced by the Jew to mere merchandise. He buys and sells, but produces nothing. The production he leaves to the workers and farmers of the host nation. The Jews are a people without farmers or workers, a race of parasites. Wherever the body of a nation shows a wound, they anchor themselves and feed on the decaying organism. They make business out of the sickness of the nations, and therefore endeavor to deepen and prolong all conditions of sickness. That's how it is in Poland and was in Germany. The Jews have been this way throughout their entire history. Their faces bear the age-old features of the perpetual sponger, the eternal Jew, who, in the course of time and worldwide wanderings, has always been the same. There's no difference between these Jews in Poland and those in Palestine, though the two are geographically separated. Palestine is the spiritual center of international Jewry, though the Jews are numerically insignificant there. Here at the Wailing Wall, they gather and mourn the fall of Jerusalem. Their homelessness, though, is a matter of choice, and in keeping with their entire history. 4,000 years ago, their Hebrew ancestors were already wandering. Out of the land of two rivers, they wandered along the sea to Egypt. where they ran a lucrative grain business for a while. When the country farmers and other Egyptians rose against the foreign usurers and speculators, they wandered once more and plundered their way to the Promised Land. They settled there, mercilessly looting the culturally superior rightful inhabitants. Here, in the course of centuries, from the Oriental Far Eastern racial mixture with Negroid admixture, the ultimate mongrelized Jews developed. Foreign from us Europeans born of totally different racial elements, they differ from us in body and above all in soul. We probably would never have been bothered by them had they stayed in their Oriental home. But the cosmopolitan empire of Alexander the Great, reaching from the Near East across half the Mediterranean, and especially the boundless world empire of the Romans, brought about the evolution of the trade and migratory traits of the Jews, who soon spread across the open Mediterranean area. While some of them settled in the large urban traffic and trade centers of the Mediterranean, others wandered relentlessly on across Spain, France, southern Germany, and England. Everywhere, they made themselves unwelcome. In Spain and France, the people rose openly against them in the 13th and 14th centuries, and they wandered on, mainly to Germany. There, they followed the path of the Aryan culture, creative Germans colonizing the East, till they finally found a gigantic new untapped reservoir in the Polish and Russian sections of Eastern Europe. The 19th century, with its muddled ideas about human equality and freedom, gave the Jews a great lift. From Eastern Europe, they spread across the entire continent during the 19th and 20th centuries, and then across the world. Parallel to these Jewish wanderings throughout the world is the migration of a similarly restless animal, the rat. Rats have been parasites on mankind from the very beginning. Their home is Asia, from which they migrated in gigantic hordes over Russia and the Balkans into Europe. By the middle of the 18th century, they'd spread over all of Europe. Toward the end of the 19th century, with the growing shipping traffic, they took possession of America as well, and eventually Africa and the Far East. Wherever rats turn up, they carry destruction to the land by destroying mankind's goods and nourishment and spreading diseases and plagues, such as cholera, dysentery, leprosy, and typhoid fever. They are cunning, cowardly, and cruel, and usually appear in massive hordes. They represent the elements of sneakiness and subterranean destruction among animals, just as the Jews do among mankind. The parasite nation of Judah is responsible for a large part of international crime. In 1932, the Jews, who made up only 1% of the world's population, accounted for 34% of the world's dope peddlers and 47% of robberies, 47% of crooked games of chance, 82% of international crime organizations, and 98% of dealers in prostitution. The most common expressions in the jargon of international gangsters and criminals stem from Hebrew and Yiddish words. These physiognomies immediately refute the liberal theories about the equality of all who bear a human countenance. The Jews alter their outward appearance when they leave their Polish haunts for the rich world. The hair, beard, skullcap, and caftan make the Eastern Jew recognizable to everyone. Should he remove them, only sharp-eyed people can spot his racial origins. An essential trait of the Jew is that he always tries to hide his origin when among non-Jews. A bunch of Polish Jews still wearing caftans. And now, in Western European clothes, prepare to infiltrate Western civilization. Of course, these ghetto Jews don't yet move too well in their clean European clothes. Somewhat more adept are the Jews of Berlin. Their fathers and grandfathers lived in the ghetto, but that's not outwardly noticeable. Here, in the second and third generation, the assimilation has reached its zenith. Outwardly, they try to act just like the host peoples. People without good instincts let themselves be deceived by this mimicry and consider Jews the same as they are. Therein lies the enormous danger. These assimilated Jews remain forever foreign bodies in the organisms of their host peoples, regardless of appearances. Even aristocrats with old Jewish names, who've intermarried with the Aryan nobility for generations and are a part of European high society, remain foreign bodies. Here we show a scene from a film about the Rothschild family. It was made by American Jews, obviously as a tribute to one of the greatest names in Jewish history.
Mama, put away the silver. I have.
They honor their hero in a typically Jewish manner, delighting in the way old Meyer Amschel Rothschild cheats his host state by feigning poverty to avoid paying taxes.
Hurry up, Carl. Come up, James. Over the fireplace. Remember, no deal for the last 5 days. Understand?
Yes, Father. Are you hungry?
Not so very.
Then look hungry.
Look hungry.
Ansel Solomon, you remain below. Mama, hide the roast. Get up, Jim. Mama, take your sewing there. Nathan, by me.
Hey, take your hands out of your pocket.
Open up, Joe. Who is it, Nathan?
Alan Rothschild.
Why, it's my good friend, the tax collector.
Bring out your account book.
Certainly, sir. Here it is. I was just looking over it. Things are very bad. I was saying to my poor wife, Dudula, this is our friend, the tax collector. Never have I known such a bad month.
No.
For 5 days, not one garden have I seen. Customers come, yes, but they don't buy.
No.
No one's traveling these days, so my exchange business is worse than nothing. I shall soon starve.
Starve, eh? Huh. Something smells good.
One of our neighbors must be having a roast. Close the window, Mama.
What do you take me for?
See, I don't understand what you mean.
Rothschild, you're doing more business than any Jew in Jew Street. You're going to pay 20,000 gulden.
20,000?
Oh.
Why, a council of the big merchants in the city doesn't pay as much as that.
That's another matter. He's outside the ghetto.
Oh.
He's not a Jew.
Oh, if you were going to kill me this instant, I could barely raise 1,000 gulden.
Upstairs. Search the house. Pull the beds apart.
Well, I might perhaps raise 2,000 gulden.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Much money is lost through sending gold by coach from one country to another. In times of war, it is seized by the enemy. In times of peace, by thieves. You are 5 brothers. I want you each to start a banking business in a different country. One to go and open a house in Paris, one in Vienna, one in London. Choose the most important centers, so that when money is to be sent from here to London, let us say, you won't have to risk life and gold and ship here in Frankfurt. We'll just send a letter to Nathan in London saying, pay so-and-so. And that will be offset by loans from London to Frankfurt. Understand?
Yes.
In your day, there will be many wars in Europe. And nations that have money to transport will come to the Rothschilds because it will be safe.
Hierzu muss bemerkt werden, dass der
Transfer of money
bargeldlose
by check is not a Jewish invention, nor was it cultivated by Jews for the good of mankind. It served them as a means of obtaining international influence over their host peoples.
No one brother must be allowed to fail while another brother succeeds. Our 5 banking houses may cover Europe, but you will be one firm, one family, the Rothschilds, who work always together. That will be your power. And when that power comes, remember the ghetto.
So Nathan goes to London and becomes an Englishman. Jacob goes to Paris and becomes a Frenchman. Solomon goes to Vienna and becomes an Austrian. Karl goes to Naples and becomes an Italian. Amschel stays in Frankfurt and remains a German. But of course, they all remain Jews. Therefore, when during the French Revolution, Jews became rightful citizens of their respective host nations, they each belonged to 2 nations at the same time. It's not for nothing that they have blood relations at all European courts, and are therefore intimately acquainted with what goes on at these courts and in the countries they preside over. In this century of industry and progress, Jewish business blooms as never before. The House of Rothschild is just one example of the use of this tactic by the Jews to spread their net of financial influence over the working man. The House of Warburg follows the same tactic as do other Jewish banking families. By the beginning of the 20th century, the Jews are sitting at all junctions of the world's money market. They're an international power. Though they make up only 1% of the population of the earth, their capital enables them to terrorize world exchanges, world opinion, and world politics. New York is today's chief center of Jewish power. The New York Stock Exchange, financial center of the world, is ruled by such Jewish banking houses as Kuhn, Loeb, Warburg, Hanauer, Wertheim, Leveson, Seligman, Guggenheim, Wolf, Schiff, Strauss, Stern, and so forth. These Jewish kings of finance love to play out their power behind the scenes and stay out of the limelight. Outwardly, they fit right in with their hosts. They look almost like genuine Americans. Bernard Baruch, Jewish financial advisor and friend of the American president, in the guise of a smart citizen of the United States. Otto Kahn, Jewish banker of Wall Street, enjoying his role as Anglo-Saxon lord. Jewish banker Felix Warburg. Jewish banker Mortimer Schiff. Jewish lawyer and German hater Samuel Untermeyer. Professor Felix Frankfurter, Jewish legal advisor to the American president. Herbert Lehman, Jewish governor of the state of New York. LaGuardia, half-Jewish mayor of New York City. Henry Morgenthau, Jewish secretary of the Treasury of the United States. The Jew Leon Blum, former Prime Minister of France, who knows how to act just like a genuine Frenchman. Millions of French workers once greeted him as their party leader. The Jew whore Belisha, former Minister of War for England. English soldiers salute their commander. But the Jew is still a rootless parasite even when in power, for his power doesn't come from his own strength. It lasts only as long as his misled hosts are willing to carry him on their backs. Remember those tragic days when Germany lay helpless? The Jews saw their chance. Just like loyal citizens, they stepped forward as though deeply concerned about the fate of the German people. They rushed to the so-called National Assembly in Weimar, where Germany's future was to be decided. The Jewish representative, Landsberg, on his left, Schneidmann. The Jew Hirsch, Prime Minister of Prussia. The Jew, Theodor Wolff, editor of a Berlin daily. The Jew, Georg Bernhardt, head of the Ullstein publishing house. The Jew, Hugo Preuss, creator of the German Constitution. The Jew, Walter Rathenau, foreign minister of Germany. The Jew Hilferding, German finance minister. The Jew Bernhard Isidor Weiss, assistant police chief in Berlin. Meanwhile, other Jews represented the radical line against law and order. In the guise of selfless humanitarians, they promised the masses castles in the sky, inciting them against civic order. Unrestrained personal freedom and self-indulgence for the individual. Rejection of all ideals and higher values. Submission to the basest life of material pleasures. Criticism of all that is sacred, revolt against everything. Incitement of the young to class warfare and terrorism. It's no accident that this doctrine of destruction of nations sprang from the Jewish mind of Karl Marx, son of Margolai, a rabbi and lawyer in Trier. The founder and organizer of the German Social Democratic Party was the Jew Ferdinand Lassalle Wolfson. The Jewess Rosa Luxemburg, real name Emma Goldman, was a notorious communist agitator. The Jew Nissen was responsible for the murder of hostages in Munich. The Jew Frankfurter was the murderer of National Socialist activist Wilhelm Gustloff. The Polish Jew Grinspan murdered the German diplomat von Rath in Paris. Although they were a small minority, they knew how to terrorize a great tolerant nation. For every 1,000 Germans, there were 10 Jews. Or better said, for every 1,000 disunified Germans who fought among themselves, there were 10 Jews who, despite business competition, all had a common goal: exploiting the Germans. The Jewish merchants crowded into the cities. 3/4 of all Jews lived in the big cities, but not to work in the factories. They left that to the Germans. For every 1,000 workers in Berlin, there were 2 Jews. At the beginning of 1933, of 100 state prosecutors in Berlin, 15 were Jews. Of 100 judges, 23 were Jews. Of every 100 lawyers, 49 were Jews. Of every 100 doctors, 52 were Jews. Of every 100 merchants, 60 were Jews. The average income for a German was 810 marks. The average income for a Jew was 10,000 marks. While millions of Germans fell into unemployment and poverty, immigrant Jews acquired fantastic riches in a few years, not through honest work, but through usury, swindling, and fraud. The Schlariks lightened the Berlin treasury by 12.5 million marks. The Jew Kutiska defrauded Prussia of 14 million. The Jew Barmont cheated the same state out of 35 million, not to mention the inflation profiteer Mendelssohn, the Jewish racketeer Katzenellenbogen, and all the rest of them. Jews are most dangerous when permitted to meddle in a people's culture, religion, and art, and pronounce their insolent judgment on them. The concept of beauty of Nordic man is incomprehensible to the Jew by nature, and will always remain so. For the purity and neatness of the German concept of art, the Jew, without roots of his own, has no feeling. What he calls art must gratify his deteriorating nerves. The stench of disease must pervade it. It must be unnatural, grotesque, perverse, or pathological. These feverish fantasies of hopelessly sick minds were once extolled by Jewish art critics of German public life as high artistic expressions. Today it seems incredible that such pictures were once bought by nearly all our galleries. But Jewish art dealers and critics praise them as the only real modern art. German cultural life was niggerized and bastardized. Painting, architecture, literature, and music suffered as well. For more than a decade, Jews wielded their profane power. As art dealers, music publishers, editors, and critics, they decided what would be called art and culture in Germany. The Jew, Kerr, art czar in the Weimar Republic. The Jew, Tucholsky, a wicked pornographer who said that treason is honorable and the heroic ideal is the stupidest idea. The Jew, Hirschfeld, who promoted homosexuality and perversion. In the guise of scientific discussions, they tried to direct mankind's healthy urges down degenerate paths. The relativity Jew, Albert Einstein, who masked his hatred of Germans behind his obscure pseudosciences. The Jew Kistenberg, controller of German music in the Prussian Ministry of Culture. The Jews' El Dorado was the German stage. Here they ruled unchecked, degrading the classical tradition by appealing to the basest instincts. The Jew Haller and his review. Likewise, the Jew Nelson. The Jew Rotter, who had a monopoly with 7 theaters in Berlin, finally skipping out while millions in debt. The Jewish review director, Robert Klein. The Jewish stage dictator, Max Reinhardt.
Sehr freundlich. Aber wir müssen es kämpfen, wenn gesprochen wird.
Wir können ja hinten eine Tür locken.
Da können wir anfangen.
Auf den meisten Bühnen regierten Juden.
Most stages were directed by Jews. The Jewish comedians Ehrlich and Morgan.
Und nicht anders war es beim Film.
It was no different in the movies.
Der jüdische Filmregisseur Richard Oswald.
The Jewish film director Richard Oswald. The comedian Geron.
Die Darstellung des Anrüchigen und
Jews consider portrayal of disreputable and repellent particularly fertile ground for comic effect.
Die Jüdin Rosa Valetti.
The Jewess Rosa Valetti.
Der Jude Kurt Bois gefällt
The Jew Kurt Bois enjoys a particularly perverted role. The Jew Kurt Nakun extols the virtues of a depraved officer who doesn't even shrink from committing a murder. The Jew is instinctively interested in everything abnormal and depraved. He seeks possibilities of disrupting a people's healthy judgment. The Jew Peter Lorre in the role of a child murderer, with the notion that not the murderer but his victim is guilty. Normal judgment is twisted by a sympathetic portrayal of the criminal to gloss over and excuse the crime.
Ja, manchmal ist mir, muss den Weg gehen, den es mich jagt. Muss rennen, rennen, endlose Straßen. Ich will weg, ich will weg. Und mit mir rennen die Gespenster, nur nicht tue, wenn ich...
Dann stehe ich vor einem Plakat und lese, was ich getan habe, und lese und lese. Was habe ich getan? Aber ich weiß doch von gar nichts. Aber wer glaubt mir denn? Wer weiß denn, wie sie mir aussieht? Wie es schreit und brüllt da innen, wie ich tun muss, will nicht, muss, will nicht, muss. Und dann schreit eine Stimme und ich kann es nicht mehr hören. Hilfe!
Eine unverhältnismäßig große
A disproportionately great number of Jews attained prominence in Germany. In newspapers and newsreels, their Jewish cronies presented them to the public as German artists. The Jew, Richard Tauber, left for New York and was mourned as an alleged loss for German art. The Jew, Ernst Lubitsch, was hailed as a German film producer.
Ich freue mich außerordentlich, in Deutschland und speziell in meiner Geburtsstadt Berlin zu sein.
The Jew, Emil Ludwig Kohn, was honored as a German writer.
Danke sehr. Ich glaube, dass ein Autor heute nichts Besseres tun kann, als den deutschen Namen mit Ehren ins Ausland zu tragen.
The Jew, Charlie Chaplin, was welcomed by an enraptured crowd when he visited Berlin. Then, much of the German public acclaimed the newcomer Jew. A deadly enemy. How could this happen? The phony dogma of human equality had tricked the healthy instinct of the nation. Centuries of religious upbringing had taught European Christians to regard Jews as fellow founders of the Christian religion. Benevolent German painters and poets idealized the biblical figures of Hebrew tribal history. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were considered pillars of the highest morality and human nobility. But we know now that the Hebrews of the Bible couldn't have looked like this. We must correct our historical view. Here's what real Hebrews look like. The following is a Jewish Purim festival, filmed by Warsaw Jews for their own use as a culture film.
Ja, die Kosten suchen. Das Pirem ist nicht kein Jomtev, in Kaduches ist nicht kein Kränk. Kaduches wollen wir selber lassen. Aber Pirem ist ein Jomtev.
Hierzu muss man wissen, dass diese
This harmless-looking family celebration commemorates the slaughter of 75,000 anti-Semitic Persians by biblical ancestors of our Jews of today.
von den biblischen Vorfahren unserer heutigen Juden ausgeübt wurde. Die Bibel berichtet über diese.
The Bible reports that the next day the Jews rested and made the day one of feasting, joy, and gift-giving. They decided that these 2 days, Purim, should be thereafter remembered by their children's children forever. Educated Germans, objective and tolerant, regard such tales as just folklore and strange customs. But that's the race of Israel, still rubbing its hands over its feast of revenge, even when dressed in the Western European clothes in which today's Israelites hide their murderous nature.
soll ihm nicht schaden.
Ja, wer soll ihm nicht schaden, weil so ist fucking ganzen geloten in Tasse.
Ist gesucht, Rasenrach. Ist gesucht.
Fuß geht gesucht. Weibe, Fuß geht gesucht.
Er hat doch von dem Gille, ist doch Bier mit mir.
Ei, geht gesucht.
Tate, halt sich in der Meile.
Tate, das lässt sich im Regen erlassen.
Ist gesucht, Rasenrach.
Heire.
Lechaim, Radnuchem, Lechaim.
Was ist das denn? Hier, wir sind mit Zitte, hab man Arsch. Na, das ist der Hummentatsch.
To understand the serious danger behind all this, it's necessary to look at the moral teachings of the Jewish race. From boyhood, the Jew learns his ancient laws in the Talmud schools.
Ist der Jude älter geworden?
As he grows older, he learns more from the books of Jewish law.
Das ist kein Religionsunterricht.
But it's not religious
Die Rabbiner,
instruction.
diese Meister der Verstellungskunst, sind
The
nicht
rabbis are not
ethnische
peaceful
Gelehrte,
theologians, but
sondern
political
politische
educators.
Erzieher.
The politics of a parasite race must be carried on in secret.
Gemacht werden. Und ihre Absichten brauchen dabei dem einzelnen Ghetto
The individual ghetto
nicht
Jew
bewusst
doesn't
zu werden.
necessarily have to know all their
Wenn
plans.
von Jugend auf mit
It's
ihrem
enough
Geist
that he's
erfüllt
filled
wird.
with the Spirit from youth on.
Was lehrt nun das
What does the
uralte
ancient
Gesetz
law, the
an?
Talmud, teach?
Hören wir einige Sprüche.
Always be cunning when afraid.
Immer sei klug,
Answer softly to
dadurch
calm the anger of the
antworte
stranger so
dann
that you'll be
und
loved.
berichtige den Zorn auf des Fremdlings, damit du beliebt seist oben und angenehm unten. Verbinde dich mit dem, welchem die
Ally
Stunde
yourself with him on whom fate smiles at the moment.
Kanaan seinen Söhnen
5
empfohlen.
things Canaan taught his sons.
Einander,
Love one another, love pillage, love excess, hate your masters, and never tell the truth.
hasset eure Herren und redet nie die Wahrheit. Die weitere Formung des jüdischen Innenlebens
Further development of the Jewish inner life is carried on in the synagogue.
dass man ihre Sprache nicht
The Jews count on people not understanding their language and ambiguous symbols.
So stellen sie sich der Kamera selbst bei ihren heiligen Handlungen. Die schwarzen Kästchen auf dem Kopf der
The
Gläubigen
black boxes on their heads contain law passages.
Das Schachern mitten im Gottesdienst
Conducting business during the service is not considered an act of disrespect by Israelites. The law teaches that whosoever teaches the Torah will succeed in business.
Die Tora-Rolle, welche die
The
5
Torah scroll, containing the 5 books of Moses and the law, is taken from the so-called Holy Ark. On its way to the pulpit, Jews kiss it to ask forgiveness for their sins. The Torah scroll is rolled to the place to be read. What sort of truths does it teach? Horahayim, verse 290. Praise to the Lord who has set apart the holy and the common nations, Israel and the other races. The heathens who do not keep your commandments, you have made enemies to be wiped out. God's anger is on them, and he says, even the best among the heathens will I kill. There are none good among the peoples of the world, for they are blasphemers. But the sons of Israel are all righteous. Haggadah 3, verse 1. And the Lord told the Israelites, you have made me the one God of the world, and I will make your people the only rulers of the world. Horahayim 126, verse 1. Glory to the Eternal One, who reduces the enemies of your people, humbles them and wipes them out, that the earth may belong to you alone and your people. This is not a religion. It's a conspiracy against all non-Jews by a sick, deceitful, poisoned race, against the Aryan peoples and their moral laws. Supposedly, their religion forbids Jews from eating ordinarily butchered meat. So they let the animals bleed to death while conscious. The Jews deceptively describe this cruel method as the most humane way to slaughter. European science has long acknowledged the torturous character of this type of slaughter. In 1892, the people voted to ban it in Switzerland. Jewish law has no love and respect for animals in the Germanic sense. It's even forbidden that the suffering animal be put out of its misery. The National Socialist movement has opposed this cruel torture of defenseless animals since its earliest days. In nearly all provincial elections and in the parliament, we moved to forbid this form of slaughter. But the entire Jew-controlled press called our stand disgraceful. The Jewish press could only get away with writing this because hardly any Germans had ever seen a kosher slaughter. Considering the well-known German love of animals, it would otherwise have been impossible for the Jews to continue their cruel torture of innocent and defenseless animals unpunished. These scenes prove the cruelty of this method of slaughter. They also reveal the character of a race that hides its senseless brutality behind the facade of pious religious customs. The Jewish butchers usually bind the animals so that no movements betray their agonies. But it's customary to sometimes slaughter unbound animals in this way.
Zo, raametje doen we lekker. Lik dan weer. Lik, lik. Weg, weg. Uit de weg, nou.
Right after the Fuhrer took power, a law enacted April 21st, 1933, forbade the Jewish form of slaughter. It decreed that all warm-blooded animals be given anesthetic before slaughter. And just as with ritual slaughter, National Socialist Germany has made a clean sweep of all Jewry. Jewish thinking and Jewish blood will never again pollute the German nation. Under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, Germany has raised the battle flag against the eternal Jew.
Die Welt hat Siedlungsraum genügend. Es muss aber endgültig mit der Meinung gebrochen werden, als sei das jüdische Volk vom lieben Gott eben dazu bestimmt, in einem gewissen Prozentsatz Nutznießer am Körper und an der produktiven Arbeit anderer Völker zu sein. Das Judentum wird sich genauso einer soliden, aufbauenden Tätigkeit anpassen müssen, wie es andere Völker auch tun. Oder es wird früher oder später einer Krise von unvorstellbarem Ausmaß erliegen. Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Völker noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht der Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
Das ewige Gesetz der
The eternal law of nature, keeping one's race pure, is the legacy which the National Socialist movement leaves to the German nation forever. In this spirit, the unified German people march on into the future.